Let's grumble.
All right, this is part 2 of how to teach your dog to be calm when guests come to the door. Now, in part 1, we really focused on inside. The part 1 is really about the things that you do inside the house before you open the door. This is really going to be a section of what your guests are going to do outside your house. And so when you're doing this, I would make sure that I would recommend that you have a family member or a friend who can help you out with this. Somebody, you don't want to practice this when it's a real guest. It is wintertime. I'm here in Nebraska. Most people are not going to want to, they're going to feel pressure if their guests are outside for too long, and they're going to feel, well, they're cold. So if you have a family or a friend, you take that pressure off yourself. Now, if you have a dog that is aggressive to people coming through the door, this is not an exercise to do with dogs that have aggression at the door. Now, as I mentioned in part 1, if you do have a high energy dog, you might want to take your dog out for a little bit of a walk, play a game of fetch, do some scent games or something along those lines before you practice this. Just don't overdo it. You want to find that Goldilocks amount of exercise. Like a good 10-15 minute walk will probably do. Now, I know that's not real world situation, but what we're doing in this case is we're setting our dog up for success. We want them to practice the activity so they feel comfortable. And once we practice it in the easy situation, that's when we can start making it actual real world, when we actually have all sorts of distractions. Now, make sure when you're doing this that you don't have a lot of busyness going outside on your street. You don't want to have construction or kids running around or things along those lines, because that's going to cause the dog to get overexcited. Now, we're going to use very similar principles to what we did inside. We're going to use the process of desensitization. It's a hard word to say, but we're going to work on helping your dog feel comfortable with the sound. Now, before you, the sound and the motion that are associated with the door opening and the sight of the guest arriving. Now, before you do this, you want to really set your guest up for success, and they're going to need some tools. So I would like you to leave some training treats outside. You can leave them outside wherever. I have a mailbox that's really convenient, so I usually leave them right here on the shelf. You're going to need high-value training treats, something your puppy really likes that has a strong smell, preferably like a chicken liver or a beef liver that's going to be something they really can smell. It's going to attract their attention. We're going to use that to lure the dog to stay down. So the first stage is, again, the desensitization. So before your guest comes to the door, they should call or text you. And if your dog can see the guests coming outside, I would kind of draw the blinds or do something along those lines, or redirect the dog's attention so that they can't see it. You don't want your dog to get all worked up as the people are walking up. That's going to set your dog up to fail. Now, the first step for this on the inside was reaching for the door handle. Now, because the door is actually closed, we don't have to worry about that particular step here. But if I open this door, there's a sound. And so that sound might be something that's hard for your dog. That might be an indicator or a trigger that causes your dog to get excited. So if that's the case, you might want to practice this with a friend or family member, and I would be talking to each other maybe outside with your earbuds on. And so what you would do is you would, and then they would give your puppy a treat by throwing the treat onto the dog bed. And then have them close it, and then do it, start off with a really light, and eventually where it gets louder and louder. And if you do this, and I would probably not go to the rest of these steps until this sound makes the dog actually go to the dog bed. And you can use the cue as we talked about in part 1 of this. Now, when your guest comes to your door, what they're going to do is they're going to knock. Now, when they knock, I want you to simply open your inside door, but leave your exterior door closed. This is an exercise that you're not going to be able to do if you do not have a screen door. So, your guest's going to come up, and again, make sure that your dogs can't see out the window or see the dog, the guest coming up, because that's going to get them all worked up. So the guest is here, they text you, I'm ready, and then you give them the thumbs up on emoji on your phone, and then they're going to go ahead and knock. And when they knock, have them knock just gently. You're going to come to the door, you're going to tell your dog to go to the dog bed, you're going to throw, and as soon as it goes to the dog bed, give it a treat. And you might actually, the first couple times, you might actually, if you have somebody in the house helping you, as you walk to the door, they're just continuing giving your dog a treat for staying on the dog bed as you walk to the door to open the door. Now, you've already taken the steps that we talked about earlier, and I don't have anybody inside, so I'm going to open the door myself. But basically, you've already taken the steps to desensitize your dog to this process. So you're going to open the inside door, and you're going to leave the exterior door closed. Now, the guest is here, and California can see me, but basically the guest is going to do the same principle that I did inside. They're going to reach for it a little bit, pull back, you're going to give the dog a treat on the inside. The guest is going to reach for a little bit further, and a little bit further, and they're not touching the handle, they're just reaching for it. The next stage would be to actually, and then pull back, and then they give their dog a treat. And again, make sure your dog is not sitting right here in front of the door. I would have them sitting on the dog bed for this part. So if at any point the dog gets up with it to goes to the dog bed, first just stop and freeze. So work out a signal with them, and then you lure the dog back to the dog bed. And the first couple times, there's nothing wrong with giving your dog treats like this, but then eventually you want to give your treats like this, and then slow it down even further. So the first step is just reaching for it, and don't go to the next step until your guest can reach for it where your dog doesn't get up off the dog bed. Next step is jiggle a little bit, pull your arm back, they give a treat. Get to the point where you can jiggle as loud as possible, the dog stays in the dog bed. The last stage is you're gonna open it a little bit, you close it, and then they give the dog a treat. And eventually open it a little bit further, and all the way. And the dog is sitting on the dog bed as the door is completely open because you've already desensitized them to stay away from rushing the door. Now your guests should not come inside until you can open the door completely wide open without them getting off the dog bed. Well, this is my buddy California, and this is part 2 on how you can teach your puppy or adult dog to be calm at the door.
West, you are a goofball.